Welcome to the Outrage Science Bites podcast, a companion podcast to the Outrage Overload podcast. This is day 13 of the NaPodPoMo challenge. That's a 30-day challenge to produce one episode a day for 30 days in the month of November. What we're going to talk about today is something that comes from Peter T. Coleman. He's an expert in political polarization and bridge building. And he talks about the importance of intentionally complicating our lives in order to avoid oversimplification and to embrace complexity. And he argues that this is especially important when dealing with divisive issues. So he talks about how when we are presented with information about a divisive issue, we tend to focus on the information that confirms our existing beliefs. And we've talked about this a bit in some of the other Science Bites episodes. We tend to focus on information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore or dismiss the information that challenges them. And that's because we have a natural tendency to want to feel comfortable and secure in our beliefs. However, this approach is counterproductive when it comes to resolving conflict or understanding complex issues. When we are able to see the issue from multiple perspectives and understand the different dimensions of it, we are more likely to have productive conversations and come up with creative solutions. And Coleman offers some practical advice for how to intentionally complicate our lives. And that includes we should force ourselves to seek out information from people who hold different views than our own, even if it's uncomfortable. And he talks about some resources to help with that. He talks about the flip side. This is a service you can subscribe to that will get you an email every day that looks at one particular issue and sort of takes it from the right and left and gives you a summary of how they differ and how they overlap. Another service similar to that is called Tangle, and that does something similar, and you get an email every day. And you can also look at something like 1440 News. 1440 News doesn't try to sort of present left and right of an issue so much. It just presents sort of news and things of the day, but it leaves out or tends to avoid the clickbait, sensationalized news and headlines. So those are some tools that might be helpful for intentionally complicating our lives. And this is basically, Coleman talks about how this is really essential for becoming more informed and engaged citizens. And he believes that by embracing complexity, we can better understand the challenges facing our world and work together to find solutions. And what I'd add to that, sort of for the purposes of lowering the temperature and the context of lowering the temperature, would be by, looking at some of those multiple sources like that and looking at different perspectives on things. You often will get a better picture about how maybe one side was, or the one thing that we saw was, maybe not giving us the full picture. And maybe to be super alarmed and freaked out about it because of the headline we saw, or it sounded really awful. They presented this thing as some person did this awful thing. And many times when you actually look into it a little deeper, it's often a little bit more complicated than that and not quite as straightforward. And so I think that's a big piece towards reducing helping to lower the temperature, which is, what we're all about here. So that's where I'll end this episode, intentionally complicating our lives in order to improve conflict resolution. If you like these episodes, you may enjoy the long format Outrage Overload podcast, where you'll hear from actual experts instead of just me. And we talk about outrage in society, outrage in politics, and ways to lower the temperature. And that is at outrageoverload.net. You can also find Outrage Science Bites episodes there. Scroll down to the bottom and you'll see a link to Outrage Science Bites on the outrageoverload.net website. So check that out, and thanks for listening, and keep an eye out for another episode tomorrow.